He was once the golden boy of his family, a rising executive who paraded his wealth through the streets of Chicago. And yet, in the silence of a stormy night, he forced his wife to sign away everything. A woman who had given her youth, her love, and a child, reduced to a signature on a paper and a handful of dollars tossed like scraps. But life has a way of turning cruelty into revelation. The same woman Daniel Brooks discarded would soon be revealed as the rightful heir to a fortune greater than his wildest dreams. What happens when the one you cast aside returns with power you never imagined? When betrayal collides with bloodlines and a mother fights for the child taken from her arms? Who truly wins? Stay with me through this story and tell me in the comments what you would have done. And if you believe no one should ever be silenced in their own home, tap like, share this video, and subscribe, because that is how these voices are heard. The storm outside pounded the windows, each strike of thunder rattling the frame of the grand Brooks estate. Inside, beneath the chandelier's cold light, Emily Carter sat at a marble table, her trembling hand hovering over the divorce papers. Daniel stood across from her, his voice sharp as broken glass. "Sign it. You've dragged this family down long enough." His mother's words cut even deeper. "A woman who cannot give us a proper heir is no more than a guest." Emily's throat tightened, but she held back tears. She looked at the only thing left of her dignity, the small silver locket hanging at her neck, and then lowered her pen. Ink bled across the page like a wound opening. Daniel snatched the papers, smirking as he tossed a check across the table. $2,000. "Take it," he sneered. "That's more than you deserve." The slip of paper fluttered to the floor, landing at her feet like a piece of trash. Emily rose, her chair scraping the marble, and walked to the door. The moment it shut behind her, the rain swallowed her whole. She stumbled through the driveway, hair plastered to her face, clutching the locket in her palm as if it could keep her alive. That night, she found refuge in a dim motel on the edge of town, the neon light buzzing against cracked wallpaper. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying Daniel's laugh, his mother's disdain, and the face of her little girl she had been forced to leave behind. At dawn, she gathered her strength and sought help. A lawyer in downtown Chicago listened, flipping through the papers with practiced indifference. He said, "Without $50,000 to fight this in court, you have no chance." Emily's lips quivered, but she refused to cry in front of him. She rose, her chair creaking against the hardwood, and whispered to herself, "If money is what they think defines me, then I will find another way." And with nothing but a broken heart and the locket at her throat, she stepped back into the storm of her new life. The streets of Brooklyn were loud with horns and footsteps, but inside the little pawn shop on the corner, the world felt strangely still. The bell above the door rang as I stepped inside, clutching the locket that had hung around my neck since childhood. Dust floated in the air, caught in a strip of sunlight across rows of tarnished watches and cracked guitars. I placed the necklace on the glass counter, my voice barely steady. "How much can I get for this?" The old man behind the counter adjusted his glasses, his eyes narrowing the moment they touched the piece. His hands trembled slightly as he picked it up, and he whispered, almost to himself, "Where did you find this?" I told him it belonged to my mother, that it was all I had left. He looked at me again, not with the indifference of a broker, but with a kind of startled reverence. Without a word, he disappeared into the back, and I heard the low murmur of a phone call. Minutes later, the growl of an engine pulled up outside, deeper and smoother than anything I had ever heard. Through the dusty glass, I saw the glossy shine of a black limousine. The door opened and a tall figure emerged, moving with the kind of authority that made the room itself seem smaller. When he stepped inside, I froze. His silver hair was combed back, his presence commanding, but his eyes softened the instant they landed on me. "What is your name?" he asked. I told him. His lips parted, and for a moment it was as if he was staring at a ghost. "Your mother," he said quietly. "Was she called Claire?" My throat tightened. "Yes," I whispered. His hands shook as he reached out towards the locket. This belonged to my daughter. The air collapsed around me. I had walked in with nothing, and now this stranger was calling me blood. Tears welled in his eyes, and he whispered, "Emily, you are my granddaughter." I could hardly breathe. My knees weakened as the truth struck me harder than any storm. The man before me was William Anderson, the tycoon whose name was carved into skyscrapers across New York. And now he was looking at me not as a stranger, but as family. He turned to the old broker, nodding once, and the man bowed his head as if receiving an order. William placed a hand gently on my shoulder. "You will not spend another night alone. Come with me. It is time you came home." His driver held the car door open, the city's noise muffled, as though the world outside no longer belonged to me. I stepped into the limousine, the leather seats swallowing the cold from my bones. As we pulled away, I clutched the locket tight, my heart racing faster than the wheels beneath me. The pawn shop, the motel, the rain-soaked night, all of it slipped behind. I had walked in searching for survival, but I was leaving with a secret powerful enough to change everything. The limousine glided through Manhattan, the city lights streaking across the tinted windows like rivers of fire. I sat frozen, my hands locked around the locket, as if letting go would shatter everything. William Anderson, the man whose face had appeared in magazines and on television for decades, sat across from me. His eyes lingered on me with a mixture of sorrow and awe. He broke the silence with a voice both steady and trembling. "You look so much like your mother the day she left this house." My chest tightened. Memories of my mother's gentle smile came flooding back, but I had never known the weight she carried. The car slowed, and when the door opened, I was staring at a world I had never imagined belonged to me. The Anderson estate rose like a palace against the night sky. Columns lined the entrance, and a fountain sparkled under golden lights. As I stepped out, the air smelled of roses and fresh-cut grass, so different from the damp alleys I had walked through days before. 2 men in black suits opened the iron gates, and inside, rows of staff bowed their heads. One of them whispered, "Welcome home, Miss Carter." My breath caught. Those words felt foreign, like clothes that didn't fit yet. I followed William through the wide doors into a grand hall where marble floors reflected the glow of chandeliers. Paintings of ancestors watched me from the walls, their eyes sharp as if questioning whether I truly belonged. Before I could take another step, a woman's voice rang out. "So this is the stray everyone is talking about." Margaret Anderson appeared at the top of the staircase, elegant in a navy silk gown, her expression as sharp as the diamonds at her neck. She descended slowly, her heels clicking like a metronome of disdain. Her eyes raked over me, cold and deliberate. "I see the resemblance," she said, "but blood alone does not make family." I clenched my fists at my sides, the urge to respond burning inside me. But William spoke first. "Enough, Margaret. This is Claire's daughter. She is my granddaughter." His voice echoed off the marble, unshakable. Margaret's lips curled into a tight smile, but her gaze never softened. "Welcome, then," she replied, though her tone made it sound more like a warning. William led me down a long corridor until we reached a door carved with roses. When it opened, I nearly fell to my knees. It was my mother's room, untouched after all these years. The vanity still held her favorite perfume, the curtains still draped in the color of spring mornings. I walked in slowly, brushing my hand along the edge of the dresser, feeling the ghost of her presence. William's voice broke, his hand trembling as he placed it on my shoulder. "I failed her once," he whispered, "but I will not fail you." The promise in his words wrapped around me tighter than any embrace. That night, as the lights of New York glittered beyond the window, I realized the storm had only just begun. The morning sun spilled through the tall windows of the estate, casting long stripes of gold across the marble floors. I stood before a mirror I hardly recognized, my reflection a stranger wrapped in silk. For years I had lived in shadows, hiding behind second-hand clothes and quiet obedience. Now, attendants circled around me, brushing powder across my cheeks, smoothing the fabric of a gown that shimmered like starlight. A woman clipped diamond earrings to my ears, and another fastened a pair of heels that lifted me taller than I had ever stood. For a moment, I felt like a mannequin, but then I caught sight of my mother's locket still resting at my throat. That little piece of silver reminded me who I was and why I was here. William entered the room, his cane tapping lightly against the polished floor. His eyes softened when they found me. "You look ready," he said, not as a compliment, but as a declaration. In his hand was a small leather case. He opened it slowly, revealing a card so black it gleamed. "This is not just money, Emily," he told me. "This is access. This is freedom." He placed the card in my palm, and its weight was heavier than gold. My chest tightened as he added, "But it comes with responsibility. This family name is both shield and sword. Use it wisely." I nodded, swallowing the rush of fear and pride tangled together. He gestured toward a folder on the table, the Anderson Group embossed across the front. "Tomorrow you will walk into the boardroom as my special assistant," he said. "They will test you. They will doubt you. Let them. Prove them wrong." His words struck like a spark on dry wood. I closed the folder, clutching it to my chest, and whispered, "I am not here for their approval. I am here for my daughter, for her smile, for her safety." William's hand tightened on his cane, his voice low but fierce. "Then fight for her as if every breath depended on it, because it does." My throat burned with the force of holding back tears, but I raised my chin. I would not cry like a victim, not anymore. As the attendants finished, I turned once more toward the mirror. The woman staring back no longer looked like the one cast out into the storm. She looked like someone prepared to walk into fire and come out unburned. The gown shimmered, the jewels sparkled, but it was the locket that caught my gaze and held it. My mother's memory, my daughter's future, and my own unyielding resolve all bound into one. That night, as I walked alone through the quiet halls of the mansion, I pressed the black card against my palm until its edges dug into my skin. Tomorrow the doors of power would open, and for the first time, I would step through them not as a beggar, not as a castaway, but as Emily Carter, the woman ready to take back everything that was stolen from her. The glass doors of the Anderson Group Tower slid open, swallowing me into a world of steel and ambition. Men in tailored suits and women in sleek heels moved with the rhythm of authority, their eyes flicking toward me with whispers they thought I could not hear. She is the lost granddaughter. She will not last a week. My steps echoed against marble floors, but my grip tightened on the folder William had given me. I followed his assistant through winding corridors until the heavy oak doors of the boardroom opened. Inside, the air was sharp with tension. A dozen directors sat around a long mahogany table, papers spread, voices rising in disagreement. At the head, William tapped his cane once, commanding silence. "This is Emily Carter," he announced. "She will be working beside me." Some faces softened into polite smiles, others curled with contempt. Margaret, seated near the end, leaned back with her arms crossed, her gaze slicing through me like ice. The meeting began, charts projected onto the wall, a development project in crisis, millions stalled by protests and lawsuits. Voices clashed, some demanding to abandon it, others shouting to push harder. I listened, heart pounding, then raised my voice for the first time. What if instead of fighting the community, we bring them in, hire locals, invest in schools, give them a reason to want us there? For a moment, silence. Then murmurs rippled around the table. A gray-haired director adjusted his glasses, nodding slowly. Another cleared his throat, considering. Margaret's pen snapped against her notebook, her knuckles white. William's face broke into the faintest smile. "An idea worth exploring," he declared. His support hung in the air like a shield. Yet Margaret leaned forward, her voice smooth but venomous. "An outsider should not dictate the future of this company." I felt my pulse in my ears, but met her stare. "I am not here to dictate. I am here to protect this family's name, and nothing protects it better than trust." My words left the room hushed, the kind of silence that cuts deeper than noise. The meeting adjourned with notes scribbled and decisions left to be made. As the directors filed out, one stopped near me, whispering, "Bold words. Let's see if you can back them up." His footsteps faded down the hall. Margaret rose, heels clicking, and passed close enough for her perfume to sting my nose. "Enjoy your moment," she hissed softly. "It will not last." When the room emptied, William tapped his cane and said quietly, "You stood your ground. Remember, the board is a battlefield. They will test you again." I closed the folder against my chest, steadying my breath. Let them test me. I thought of my daughter's face, the bruise on her small arm, the fear in her eyes. That was my fire, my reason. As we walked out together, I knew this was not just a meeting, it was the first step into war. The chill of autumn clung to the air as I crossed Central Park, my heels sinking softly into the fallen leaves. The boardroom battles still echoed in my mind, but today my heart raced for a different reason. Daniel had agreed, under the watch of his lawyer, to let me see my daughter for 15 minutes. 15 minutes to remind her that I had never abandoned her. 15 minutes to hold her again. I spotted them near the carousel, her small figure bundled in a pink coat, her hand trapped inside Daniel's. My breath caught as I hurried forward. When she saw me, her face lit like the sun breaking through storm clouds. "Mommy," she cried, wriggling free. She ran into my arms and I dropped to my knees, clutching her with every ounce of strength left in me. The warmth of her little body pressed against mine erased the cold for a moment. I buried my face in her hair, whispering, "I'm here, baby. I've always been here." But as I pulled back, my smile faltered. On her tiny wrist, just below the sleeve, was a dark bruise, raw and fresh. My fingers trembled as I traced it gently. "Who did this to you?" I asked, my voice low, steady, though rage boiled beneath. Her eyes darted toward the woman standing a few feet behind Daniel, Nina, his mistress, her lips curved in a mocking smile. My daughter's voice came out in a whisper. "She pinches me when I talk about you. She says if I don't stop, she'll lock me in the basement." My chest burned, my vision blurred, but I forced myself not to break in front of her. I kissed her forehead, blinking away tears, and pulled my phone from my coat pocket. With one hand still holding her close, I snapped a photo of the bruise, my heart pounding louder than the city noise. Evidence, proof they could not deny. Daniel stepped forward, his jaw tight, his voice dripping with disdain. "Time's up, Emily. Don't confuse her with your dramatics." I rose slowly, holding my daughter's hand until the last second. He yanked her back, her little eyes brimming with tears as she cried, "I want to stay with Mommy." My knees nearly buckled, but I stood tall, locking my gaze on him. "You won't keep her from me forever." He smirked, sliding his arm around Nina, and led my daughter away. I stood rooted to the ground, the sound of her sobs carrying long after they disappeared into the crowd. My hand clenched around the phone, around the photo that now burned like a weapon in my pocket. The world blurred, the carousel spinning behind me, but inside I felt the storm gather, fierce and unstoppable. For my child's safety, for her innocence, I would go further than I ever thought possible. They had drawn the line, and I was ready to cross it. The photo of the bruise still burned on my phone when I stormed back into the Anderson estate. My hands shook, not from fear, but from a fury so sharp it could cut glass. That night, I spread papers across my desk, folders William had granted me access to, contracts and audits Daniel never thought I would touch. I dug through them like a woman possessed, chasing threads of numbers that twisted into lies. And there it was, hidden in plain sight. Shell companies, fake invoices, millions siphoned away under Daniel's name. Every signature, every date, was a nail in his coffin. I leaned back, pressing a hand against my chest, forcing myself to breathe. My daughter's voice echoed, her small whisper about being locked away. This was bigger than bruises. It was theft, deceit, rot that bled into everything he touched. I slid the evidence into a flash drive, sealing it into the metal case of William's safe. My reflection in the polished steel door stared back at me, no longer fragile, no longer helpless. I whispered to myself, for her, I will burn his empire down. The next morning, I waited outside her school, hoping for another glimpse. When Daniel arrived, his suit pressed sharp as knives, Nina at his side in a fur coat, I stepped into his path. I held my phone out, the photo of the bruise glowing between us. "Explain this," I demanded. His smirk faltered just for a second, then he sneered. "Kids get hurt. Don't make a scene." I held his gaze. "If you lay another hand on her, if you let her suffer one more night, I will make sure the world knows who you really are." Nina laughed, tossing her hair, empty threats from a woman who begged for scraps. Daniel pulled her close, but I saw the flicker in his eyes, the flicker of fear. He muttered through clenched teeth, "You don't have the power to touch me." I stepped closer, my voice dropping low enough for only him to hear. "I don't need power. I have proof." For a heartbeat, silence pressed between us. Then he shoved past, dragging my daughter toward the gates. She turned her head, tears streaking down her cheeks, reaching out for me. I raised my hand, not to wave, but to promise that I would not stop. That night, the estate buzzed with whispers. Margaret called me into her office, her smile sharp as glass. "You think one clever idea in a boardroom makes you untouchable? Let's see how you handle real work. Analyze this company. Convince me they're worth our trust." She slid a file across the desk, and when I opened it, my blood ran cold. Brooks Enterprises, Daniel's Empire. I closed the folder slowly, fighting the twist in my stomach. Margaret leaned back, satisfied with her trap. "Welcome to the real Anderson family test." I left her office with the file clutched against my chest, the weight of both past and future pressing down. But beneath the pressure, something inside me steadied. If they wanted a war, I had already chosen my weapon. The night of the gala arrived with a sky full of glittering stars and a city that never seemed to sleep. The Waldorf Astoria glowed like a jewel in the middle of Manhattan, its ballroom already buzzing with the power and wealth of New York's elite. I stepped from the limousine, the gown William's staff had chosen hugging me like armor, the silver locket at my throat catching the light of 100 cameras. Flashbulbs burst, voices called out questions, but all I heard was the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. Tonight was not about beauty or spectacle. Tonight was war. Inside, the chandeliers poured light over crystal glasses and tuxedos. Laughter rippled across the room, deals whispered behind champagne flutes. When William entered, silence followed him like a shadow. His hand pressed firmly to my back as he guided me to the center of the stage. The music faded, and his voice carried across the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce my granddaughter, Emily Carter. From this day forward, she stands beside me as Vice President of the Anderson Group." Applause erupted, though I could hear the scattered claps of those who would rather see me fall. Margaret's eyes burned from the corner of the room, her smile stretched too tight. I moved among the guests, each handshake a performance, each word measured. Then I felt the weight of a stare, heavy and poisonous. Across the ballroom stood Daniel, his arm around Nina, his grin as smug as ever. My chest clenched, but I did not falter. I walked straight to him, my heels clicking like a drumbeat of defiance. Without a word, I motioned toward the staircase that led to the rooftop terrace. He followed, curiosity hiding behind his arrogance. The night air was cool, the hum of the city alive beneath us. I pulled the flash drive from my clutch, its silver glint catching his eye. "These are the records, Daniel. Every shell company, every fake invoice, every stolen dollar. If I give this to the authorities, you'll be finished." He scoffed, though the smirk faltered at the edges. "You wouldn't dare." I stepped closer, lowering my voice to a blade's edge. "Try me. You have 24 hours. Either you grant me full custody of our daughter, or this file destroys you." For the first time, his mask slipped. His jaw tightened, his breath unsteady. The city lights reflected in eyes that suddenly held fear. Nina's voice called faintly from below, but he didn't move. He searched my face for weakness and found none. I tucked the drive back into my clutch, turned without another word, and descended the stairs. Back in the ballroom, the music swelled again, violins sweeping through the air. I smiled at the cameras, shook more hands, all while Daniel remained frozen above, a man realizing that his kingdom was crumbling beneath him. My heart pounded with victory, but deep inside, I knew the night was far from over.
The gala had barely ended when chaos struck like lightning. One moment William stood tall, shaking hands beneath the chandeliers. The next, his face drained of color. He clutched his chest, his cane slipping from his grasp, and collapsed onto the marble floor. The music screeched to a halt. Gasps tore through the crowd. I dropped beside him, calling his name, but his eyes fluttered shut. "Call an ambulance," I screamed, my voice breaking. Paramedics rushed in, wheeling him away as whispers spread like wildfire through the ballroom. Margaret's eyes gleamed in the corner, not with fear, but with satisfaction, as if the stage she had been waiting for had finally arrived. As I stumbled toward the hospital wing of the ambulance, my phone buzzed violently in my clutch. An unknown number. Answered with trembling hands, on the other end was a nurse, her tone urgent. "Your daughter has been brought into New York Presbyterian. High fever, nearly convulsing. You need to come immediately." My blood froze. My legs wanted to run in 2 directions at once. William's pale face haunted me through the glass, but the voice of my little girl crying out for me shattered everything else. I whispered to his unconscious body, "Hold on, Grandpa. I'll be back," before rushing into the night, the city blurring past as the car carried me to my child. The hospital air smelled of antiseptic and despair. I burst into the pediatric wing, my daughter lying small and fragile against the white sheets, her forehead burning with fever. I fell to my knees beside her bed, pressing her damp hand to my lips. "Mommy's here, sweetheart. I won't leave you again." Her lips quivered in a faint smile, but her voice cracked. "Please don't let them take me away." My heart broke into pieces, and I could no longer hold back the sob that tore from my chest. Behind me, a slow clap echoed. Daniel stood in the doorway, a cruel grin plastered across his face. "Touching," he sneered, "but you'll never win. You think a flash drive scares me? Without your grandfather, you're nothing." His words cut deeper than any knife, but I rose to my feet, wiping the tears from my cheeks. I stepped toward him, my voice steady as steel. "I am not nothing, and you are running out of time." He shoved a folder into my hands, the papers inside heavy with signatures. "Sign away your claim to the Anderson estate, and maybe I'll let you keep the girl." My hand trembled as I held the folder, rage boiling hotter than fear. The audacity, the cruelty, the sheer arrogance of him, standing there while our daughter burned with fever. I tore the folder in half and let the pieces scatter to the floor. His smirk vanished, replaced with a flicker of panic. The beeping of the monitor grew steady again as the doctor rushed in, pushing Danielle aside. My daughter's fever began to drop, her small body relaxing against the sheets. I pressed a kiss to her forehead, whispering my vow so soft only she could hear. "No matter what they try, I will protect you. I will fight until the end." The day of reckoning came beneath a sky heavy with clouds, the kind that seemed to hold their breath before a storm. The Anderson boardroom was filled to its edges, directors murmuring, investors whispering, reporters lining the back wall like vultures, waiting for the first drop of blood. At the head of the table, William's chair sat empty, his absence a wound that everyone could feel. Margaret stood tall in navy silk, her voice ringing with authority. "With my brother indisposed, it is my duty to secure the future of this company. The girl is inexperienced, unproven, and has no right to sit among us." Her words spilled like poison, each syllable designed to crush me. I rose slowly, clutching the silver locket at my throat, and met her gaze. "If proof is what you want," I said, sliding the flash drive across the polished wood, "then let us show everyone what family loyalty really means." The screen flickered to life behind me. Numbers unraveling, contracts flashing, evidence unfolding. Every forged invoice, every offshore account, every stolen dollar bore Daniel's name. Gasps rippled through the room. Margaret's painted smile cracked. The doors burst open, and 2 officers strolled in, their badges gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Daniel staggered as they took him by the arms, his voice breaking into a snarl. "This is a mistake! She set me up!" He twisted, shouting as cameras flashed, but the evidence spoke louder than his desperation. Nina's heels clattered as she tried to slip away, but the officers caught her too. In that instant, the mighty Brooks empire collapsed in handcuffs and disgrace. But the reckoning was not finished. A final file appeared on the screen, older, dustier, hidden deep in the archives. A recording of Margaret's voice, cold and calculated. Cut the brakes. If Claire won't bend, she won't live to inherit. My mother's name echoed like a scream across the boardroom. The room erupted. Directors shouted, reporters scrambled for footage, the world tilting on its axis. Margaret's face drained of color. That recording means nothing, she spat, but her trembling hands betrayed her. The door opened again, and there he was. William, frail but standing, his cane tapping against the floor like a gavel of judgment. The room fell silent. As he spoke, his voice rough but unshakable. You destroyed my daughter. You tried to destroy my granddaughter. No more. His signature slid across a document, stripping Margaret of every title, every privilege, every claim to the Anderson name. She crumbled into her chair, defeated, her diamonds suddenly nothing more than stones. Later, in the courthouse, the judge's gavel struck once, granting me full custody of my daughter. I held her hand, tears streaming down both our cheeks as Daniel was led away in shackles. Outside, reporters shouted my name, but I walked past them, holding my little girl close, the only title that mattered to me resting in her whispered word, Mommy. Weeks later, I stood on the balcony of the Anderson Tower. New York stretched endless below. My daughter laughed in my arms, her eyes clear, her smile free. The storm had passed. The empire was mine now, but more than that, her safety, her future, her joy were finally secure. I turned to the camera of the world, my voice calm but firm. Never let anyone define your worth. Strength is not given, it is claimed, and love is the one inheritance that cannot be stolen. If you believe no child should ever live in fear, share this story. Leave your thoughts below and subscribe to stand with every voice that refuses to be silenced.